Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. LL3's News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy Mandeville, South Florida. And today's date is Friday, June 21st, 2019. So let us begin. Greetings and happy winter and summer solstice, wherever you're at around the world. Yeah, it's nice little warm day here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Plus, I'm at Stash, located at 109 Southwest 2nd Avenue in the heart of the Hemisphere District in Fort Lauderdale, adjacent with Revolution Live and America's Backyard. Yeah, so having some coffee, kicking back, and just got off of work and just did a little mind scrambling and see what the hell I want to be talking about. Of course, the big hype and hoopla about attacking the American drone, and people talking about going to the brink of war with Iran, and Trump stood back, and all that good stuff. I know a lot of people who are politically inclined that supported Trump are very disappointed, but you got others that are just bootlickers, lick the shoes and kiss the floor he walks on. Nothing new whatsoever, because it happened with the predecessors as well, including Barack Obama, the Abominations. Now, I'm not here trying to condemn, but one thing for sure, folks, never, ever look at these politicians as your Lord and Savior. It will burn you in the end. You should ask them questions. Why do you have these neocon hacks in your cabinet? That will be legit. Ask him, will John Bolton go on the front line of battle if he wants to, if he supports going to war with Iran, and Pompeo as well, and all the other dinkleberries in Washington D.C., including the Pentagon. Those are the questions we should be addressing, and they assume we don't know the history on why the relations went turmoil. In 1953, with Operation Ajax, CIA declassified information on the CIA coup along with the MI5 and British Persian Oil, which is now British Petroleum. Of course. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Legislators was real popular in that nation, but you change it because he wants to nationalize the oil fields. Now, they still hate us because we're free. It doesn't work anymore, friends. People are waking up. Hopefully you are as well, including your neighbors. If Trump goes in, we gotta attack Iran, and everyone will go, Trump train, Trump train. If you do that, then you have the same attributes as the Abominations. When, during his time, when Barack Obama was president, attacked Libya, and no one said a damn thing about it. That's right. I bash all tyrants equally, whether they're masterminds or just puppets or patsies. Question everything, my friends. And trust me, you'll feel better in the long run. However, so I'm going to be talking about a few things pertaining to this matter. And this one here is from consortiumnews.com. And it's entitled 10 Minutes to War by Joel Luria. And of course it says here, Donald Trump pulled back from igniting the potential disastrous war in the Persian Gulf on Thursday night with just 10 minutes to spare. But the super hawks he surrounded himself with will probably try again, writes Joel Luria. The Commander-in-Chief acted like one. If only briefly, on Thursday night he said he called off airstrikes on Iran and potentially a devastating war in the Persian Gulf. With just 10 minutes to spare, when he says a general told him to expect around 100 Iranian civilian deaths. Donald Trump tweeted on Friday morning. On Monday, they shot down an unmanned drone flying in international waters. They were cocked and loaded to retaliate last night on 3 different sites. When I asked how many will die, 150 people, sir, was an answer from a general. 10 minutes before the strike, I stopped it. Not. proportionate to shooting down an unmanned drone. I am in no hurry. Our military is rebuilt, new and ready to go, by far the best in the world. Sanctions are biting and more added last night. Iran could never have nuclear weapons, not against the USA and not against the world. Did Sheldon Adelson made him say that? Possibly. It seems unlikely that a president would have to ask at the last minute about potential civilian casualties, unless the Pentagon has become so callous as to not have figured that into its war planning. A more likely scenario is that Donald Trump was in an epic struggle with his most hawkish national security advisors, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and National Security Advisor John Bolton, and with himself, and that he could not decide what to do until literally the last 10 minutes, using the excuse of civilian deaths to pull back. Trump's inner struggle on Iran has played out in public, mostly on Twitter. He has been sending serious mixed signals to Iran. On one hand, he has told Iran he wants to negotiate with them to replace the nuclear deal he's unwisely pulled out last year, and on the other hand, he's gone as far as threatening with amounts to genocide. If Trump is engaged in a good cop, bad cop strategy with Iran, with Pompeo and Bolton playing very convincing bad cops, then Trump is a disaster as a good cop. He has been essentially playing good cop, bad cop with himself. We've got 3 bad cops here, Pompeo, Bolton, and half of Trump, and then 1 good cop, the other half of Trump. If he were really committed to the anti-interventionist rhetoric of his campaign, which many of his followers still believe in, he wouldn't have appointed Pompeo and Bolton to begin with, unless under extreme pressure from someone like Sheldon Adelson, a fanatically pro-Israel casino magnate and major Republican donor. Pompeo and especially Bolton have demonstrated that they are trying to run U.S. policy on Iran on their own, managing, manipulating, or attempting an end run around Trump. At the top of Bolton's agenda has stated aimed for years to bomb and topple the Iranian government. Thus, Bolton was a driving force to get a carrier strike force sent to the Persian Gulf, and according to the New York Times on May 14th, it was he who ordered a Pentagon plan to prepare 120,000 U.S. troops for the Gulf. These were to be deployed if Iran attacked American forces or accelerate its work on nuclear weapons. 2 months after Bolton was appointed National Security Advisor in June 2018, Trump pulled the U.S. out of six-nation deal, has seen Tehran curtail its nuclear enrichment program in exchange for relaxation of the U.S. and international sanctions. At the time of Bolton's appointment in April 2018, Tom Countryman, who has been Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, has had Bolton predicted to The Intercept that if Iran resumed enrichment after the U.S. left the deal, it would be a kind of excuse that a person like Bolton would take to create a military provocation or direct attack in Iran. This is one of Trump's tweets here on May 19th. If Iran wants to fight, that will be official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again. In response to ever tightened sanctions, Iran said on May 6th in Tehran that it will be indeed increased nuclear enrichment. On the same day, Bolton announced the carrier attack strike group was headed to the Gulf. On June 10th, the International Atomic Energy Agency said that Iran has made good on its threat to accelerate enrichment. This has been followed by several suspicious attacks on tankers in the Persian Gulf, the most serious occurring last week on Japanese tankers while the Japanese Prime Minister was sitting with Iranian officials in Tehran trying to defuse the situation. The incident that ultimately led up to Thursday's close call with disaster was sparked by Iran shooting down U.S. RQ-4A Global Hawk surveillance drone. Iran said it was an Iranian airspace. The U.S. said it was over international waters. A U.S. airstrike on Iran would almost surely invite retaliation by Tehran, risking a spread of catastrophic war engulfing the Arab states on the opposite shores of the Gulf. This would not be Saddam Hussein's troops running away from advancing U.S. forces. The commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards warned Friday that the U.S. military bases and the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier were within range of Iranian missiles. In a delegates' lounge at the United Nations headquarters in New York several years ago, I had a one-on-one conversation with Jahad Zarif, Iran's foreign minister, who was then Tehran's ambassador to the UN. I confided in him that I thought the U.S. was being the aggressor, but I asked him, for the sake of his country and the region and to avoid a devastating conflict, what Iran might make the very difficult decision to give in to Washington. We would rather fight and die than give in, Zarif told me. Instead of standing up to Bolton and Pompeo, who this week tried to peddle the ludicrous tale that Shiite Iran supports Sunni extremist Al-Qaeda while fighting it in Syria, Trump instead runs to Fox News to whisper to the interviewer as if they were alone about the military-industrial complex being real and how much his advisors, presumably Pompeo and Bolton, like war. He needs to tell them that. Last-minute excuses about civilian deaths probably won't work next time. Pompeo and Bolton set Trump up for disaster. Yeah, like I said before, throw those clowns in the front line to see how these scumbags, tough these scumbags are. That's how I look at it. I've been saying this for a good amount of time, folks. It just drives me crazy. But instead of complaining and screaming and yelling, I'd rather run my mouth, do the show, and tell you how I feel. Like I said, throw them on the front line. Bunch of imperialist hacks, indeed. In one of the areas, like I tell folks, and the people around me, they're tired. Okay? They see the history. People learn the history of false flag events that good folks from all sides of the war, including non-combatants, suffered from it to benefit a handful of maggots. That's right. Tyrannical maggots. This is what these folks are. Their nature, their attributes is downright filthy. Bottom line is this. If Pompeo and Bolton want to go to war with Iran, throw them on the front line. Plain and simple. Everyone should just tweet to them, call them up, and go, you go on the front line, you gutless cowards. Let's see how genuine you really are. I know one thing, they don't want to do it because they believe they're that special and the world should revolve around them. I'm going to continue on here pertaining to this matter. This one here came from the IndianPunchline.com, which I got this from the RonPaulInstitute.org. And it says here, this is by M.K. Bahad Drakumor. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. U.S. credibility dented in Iran standoff. The U.S. President Donald Trump's reported decision to abruptly call off military strike against Iran, which he previously ordered, highlights the growing complexity of the U.S.-Iranian entanglement. Indeed, it takes political courage to rationalize amidst such a dangerous situation that discretion is a better part of valor. Trump has been smart enough, but having said that, there's going to be downstream consequences. The Trump administration appears paralyzed, and Tehran has seized the diplomatic initiative. What prompted Trump's rethink? Surely the rethink of somewhat legitimized the Iranian assertion that it shot down an American drone which is intruded into its airspace. In fact, Iran has since claimed that it recovered the debris of the downed U.S. drone in the country's southern waters. The U.S. has a history of lying in such situations. Remember the downing of a scheduled Iranian passenger Airbus A300 flight in 1988 by an SM-2MR surface-to-air missile fired from the USS Vanessa, killing all 290 people, including 66 children on board. The U.S. at the level of Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush lied over U.S. culpability, saying, I never apologize for the United States. I don't care what the facts are. I'm not an apologize for the American kind of guy. Hope I mimic him well. Only years later, in 1996, Washington agreed to pay Iran U.S. $131.8 million in settlement to discontinue a case brought by Iran in the International Court of Justice relating to this incident. Therefore, the known unknown here is what point exactly Trump will have realized that this was a U.S. spying mission that went horribly wrong. It constituted a recklessly ultimate, untimely provocation against Iran. Of course, an admission of guilt is not to be expected, but Trump apparently decided not to begin a war based on falsehood. An expert opinion in The Atlantic details the unlovely truth that throughout its history, America has attacked countries that did not threaten it. To carry out such wars, American leaders have contrived pretexts to justify American aggression. That's what Donald Trump's administration, and especially his National Security Advisor John Bolton, is doing now with Iran. According to the New York Times, Trump's National Security Advisor are split about whether to respond militarily after Iran shot down the U.S. surveillance drone for intruding into its airspace. Senior administration officials told the Daily that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, National Security Advisor John Bolton, and CIA Director Gina Haspel, who loves torture, by the way, had favored a military raid. But top Pentagon officials cautioned that such an action could result in a spiraling escalation with risk for American forces in the region, the New York Times added. At any rate, Trump's smartness lies here, in the sense that he can understand that a war with Iran is risky, which the U.S. can only win at a high cost and may even destroy his presidency. Second, there are no takers. There are no takers in the international community for a war against Iran. Even the UAE and Saudi Arabia have taken fright. Tehran has disclosed that the U.S. drone took off from the UAE. France has openly disagreed with the U.S. on the standoff with Iran, reflecting the mood in Europe. Trump was sensed that any move against Iran by the U.S. will be a solo act. No doubt an influential section of American opinion has begun voicing opposition to any U.S. military strike against Iran. See the video below of a PBS interview with Stephen Hartley, former National Security Advisor in the George W. Bush administration, and General Alrod, former French ambassador to Washington. You can watch that video yourselves. What lies ahead, clearly, Trump has so far seemed to be looking for a way to avoid potentially serious military crisis with Iran. Nonetheless, the danger of escalation remains. There are hardliners in both countries, and it may turn out that they become mutual enablers and going up in the escalation ladder. There are always the unintended consequences, but two adversaries indulge in brinkmanship while guessing about each other's intentions. Fundamentally, Trump's policy lacks coherence and clarity. Its maximum pressure policy has become an end in itself. The policy narrows down to achieving either two goals: outright an Iranian capitulation or implosion of our Iranian regime is neither is realistic objective. Plainly put, what Iran may have achieved in the drone incident is to demonstrate not only its capability, but its political will and determination to counter the U.S. economic war against it. Paradoxically, the U.S. has implied such coercion against Iran by playing havoc with Iran's economic ties with the rest of the world that the latter has no more option left but to escalate the tensions to a point that is not Iran alone that suffers, but the U.S. and its regional allies as well. Simply put, the resistance has shifted gear. The Iranian missile strike at the U.S. drone has taken place within 2 days of Trump formally announcing his candidacy for the 2020 November election. This carefully collaborated act of escalation will have served the purpose of highlighting to Trump that there is a high price to pay for the untold suffering he has imposed on the Iranian people by denying them health care and medicines and inflicting severe economic hardships. To be sure, the festive kickoff event in the Amway Center Stadium in downtown Orlando on Tuesday has already been drowned out by the sound of war drums. Give the above, there is no rule suitable for direct U.S.-Iranian diplomatic engagement. But for that to happen, there has to be some sort of gesture by the American side. Tehran will expect, at a minimum, an easing sanction by the Trump administration in terms of, say, giving waivers to third countries to import Iranian oil. Surely the U.S. started to spiral tensions when a decision last May to leave the Iranian nuclear deal, and it is the responsibility of the Trump administration to make a gesture. How Trump can manage to do it is a big question. The Trump administration's aggressive and confused policy towards Iran has dented the U.S. credibility. And that is true. And one of the areas to always say is just, you can't let, when the history repeats itself over and over and over again, that information comes out of the woodworks, it's always gonna blow back in people's faces. It doesn't matter politically, one way or the other. And a person like myself, I'm not crazy, but I may not be crazy about the government of Iran that they have right now. Well, you know what? We cannot really stick in anyone's affairs. We can't tell them what to do, how to think, or what to worship, who to worship, etc., and who to trade with. That's a mistake. It's a form of neo-mercantilism on a global perspective. Sanctions is an act of war, regardless what you think. And this is why a person like myself is against an empire. I know I'm not the only one, but people aren't buying it. I chat with folks almost everywhere I go. There are a lot of folks I chat with. They're not too crazy about this stuff. Go to war with Iran. Come on. Just get that grand chessboard, the original rules from grand chessboard, and say this is a deceptive, rhetorical deception, but don't burn it into the ashes. Has to be displayed. This is what Zigbro Brzezinski wants and his neocon warmongering hacks for a long time. Even the one I did, I posted one on which path to Persia by the Brookings Institution. Same thing. All of the power in the world. We have bases U.S. bases surrounding the nation. What would happen if Iran had bases in Mexico and Canada? You think people like that? Oh no, we don't like that at all. So don't play the game of exceptionalism. Keep it real. The founding fathers agree on one thing: no foreign entanglements, no allies, trade with all. No alignments, trade with all. But all these hacks think they're smarter than our founding fathers. That's how pathetic they believe you're that stupid. All right, well, next one here. Came from the AmericanConservative.com. Good article. It's a good site. People should really check this out. And let me see here. Here, boom. Yeah. Oh, shoot. Hold on here. Oh, right there. Beautiful. This one here is entitled Lies They Told Us, A Long History of Being Manipulated into War. This is by Robert W. Mary. Came out today. It says, before we retaliate over drone and oil tankers, take a look at all the times we've been duped. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says there's no question that Iran initiated the recent attack on those two oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. The evidence, he says, is indisputable and unmistakable. President Donald Trump weighs in with the same degree of certainty. Well, Iran did do it, he told Fox News. Maybe, but our past is screaming at us. Don't buy it. You can't trust your leaders. When war fever is set and war prospects are on the rise, consider the history surrounding the run-ups to the Mexican War, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and Iraq War. Lies, misrepresentations, and manipulations abound in all those episodes. As for the tankers, where's the evidence? True, the U.S. Central Command trotted out a video that appears to show unidentified people in a small boat removing something from the side of a tanker, an unexploded mine. We are told by U.S. officials who assert this constitutes proof of Iran's complicity. As Trump puts it, and you know they did it because you saw the boat. They had, if I'm correct, you have pirates in that area too. Man, think about that. But that's pretty thin stuff. Germans and Japanese made that clear when they requested strong evidence at a grainy video released by the Pentagon. Now comes Politico with a piece saying the Trump administration has been making case in a public and private that no new congressional authorization would be necessary to go to war with Iran. They can simply rely on the 2001 authorization against Afghanistan after the 9/11 attacks on American soil. Huh? So how that supersedes Congress's power to have the power to go to war under Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution? Politico. Yeah, another New World Order entity. Leave aside for the moment the ominous threat that poses to the constitutional precept that Congress is a repository of the nation's war-making power. It also would preclude a congressional debate on the matter, deprive the nation of an opportunity to assess the facts before hostilities actually begin. The following historical episodes reveal the importance of getting those facts established before the country goes to war. Check this out. James K. Polk, President Polk, to be exact, and the Mexican War. Contrary to allegations that have dogged the 11th president for nearly 180 years, it isn't quite true to say that he lied, but he did declare to the nation that Mexico has spilled American blood on the American soil. The problem is that it wasn't strictly speaking American soil. That territory has been under dispute between Mexico and Texas during the name of Texas independence. An American inherited dispute when we acquired Texas through the annexation in 1845. It could be argued that Polk was merely expressing his view that it disputed territory actually belonged to the United States, just as Texas had always insisted that it belonged to Texas. But such niceties of languages shrouded the fact that there are no other way for America to acquire what is now in the southwestern California, that Polk wanted war with Mexico. And he maneuvered events with clear intent to force the issue, much as Pompeo seems to be doing now. Polk sent an army in the disputed territory and planted directly across the Rio Grande from the dusty little Mexican town of Matamoros, when a large number of Mexican troops were stationed. This was highly incendiary, and it inevitably led to a skirmish in which 11 American soldiers were killed and another 50 or so captured. Polk promptly sent a message to Congress saying the United States and Mexico were in a state of war and calling for a congressional war declaration. Interesting there, right? Interesting there. So, and it says here, South Carolina Senator John C. Calhoun, among others, would have none of it. Since this skirmish, he said, was a mere local conflict not authorized by either government. It was a monstrous to blow up into a doctrine that every American is now an enemy of every Mexican. But American blood has been spilled and the country was riled. The final Senate vote was 40-2, with Calhoun refusing to answer the roll call. The previous House voted was 173-14. This is plenty of documentary evidence, including Polk's own diary, that the president wanted that war, and that by maneuvering his troops in such a way as to render bloodshed all but inevitable, he manipulated public opinion. Indeed, even before the skirmish on the Rio Grande, he was preparing to ask Congress for a war declaration. Interesting there. Another, instigate and to say we're the victim. Woodrow Wilson, and if I remember too, they're planning to do impeachment too on and James Polk as well. And if I remember that, so I could be mistaken, but look it up for sure. Woodrow Wilson and World War I. There can be no doubt that Wilson was re-elected president in 1916 with just 49.2% of the vote. His stated resolve to keep America out of Europe's Great War, but it was all phony, as he always hankered to get America onto the world stage. It wasn't easy to keep the United States out of war through the election season. Yes, give me hit the train coming by here. It wasn't easy to keep the United States out of war for the election season. Even delicate neutrality issues forced upon the U.S. by both Britain and Germany. Britain imposed a blockade designed to thwart all trade to Germany and the Central Powers and to starve the whole population, men, women, and children, old and young, wounded and sound into submission, as Britain's pugnacious First Seaboard Winston Churchill brazenly declared. Wilson initially sought to wend his way through his neutrality thicket, render all were more difficult after Germany initiated submarine attacks designed to stop munitions shipments to Britain and counteract the blockade. But ultimately, he favored the UK and took actions he knew to draw America into the war. He not only observed the British blockade, but also armed British merchants' entry to U.S. ports, in which turn fostered a flow of American munitions to the Allied powers. At the same time, Wilson declared that Germany would be held to a strict accountability for any Americans' loss of life or property from German submarine tanks designed to enforce neutrality that Wilson was flouting. This policy, he added, will apply even if affected Americans were traveling or working on British or French ships. After all, he declared Americans had the right to travel on any vessel they wanted, even in wartime. Wilson's Secretary of State, William Jennings Bryan, warned the president that he faced a stark choice: either adopt or even more even-handed approach to accept the inviolability of war. Bryan ultimately resigned over the issue, and he turned out to be right. A desperate German suffering horrendously under Churchill's starvation policy initiated unrestricted submarine warfare against the ships carrying goods to Britain or France. Wilson promptly asked for the Congressional Declaration of War and got it. Franklin Roosevelt and World War II. When Europe was once again thrust into a dark conflict after Nazi Germany's invasion of Poland in September 1939, FDR almost desperately wished to take America in, but the country, still stung by the bitter fruits of Wilson's previous intervention, didn't want to enter the fray. I am almost literally walking on eggs, Roosevelt wrote to a foreign official, explaining the precarious perch between his own powerful conviction and the public's aversion to war. I am at the moment saying nothing, seeing nothing, and hearing nothing. But this wasn't quite true. He was applying the stealth and wiles in every way possible to help Britain and nudge his country to war. He passed diplomatic secrets to friendly reporters to help the cause. He initiated secret death charges on German ships in the submarines in the North Atlantic. As Robert Shurgogin writes in his book, Hard Bargain, FDR almost certainly violates the Prevailing Neutralities Act by making destroyers available to Britain, an action that another time in a political climate could have been impeachable. And he maneuvered Japan into a position of near desperation in an effort to force a confrontation. That he knew he was doing is evidenced by the fact that he initiated planning for the removal of Japanese Americans from the West Coast even before Pearl Harbor. As John Toland reveals in his 1980 book Infamy, Shogun writes that FDR didn't hesitate to twist the law, flout of the Constitution, hoodwink the public, and distort the political process. So actually, he was saying he put the sanctions on, and he had a pre-written executive order in 1966. And people tell me FDR is such a great president. Please. Lyndon Johnson and the Vietnam War. On August 2nd, 1964, North Vietnamese PT boats attacked the USS Maddox in the Gulf of Tonkin. This could not have been surprised those in the know inside the U.S. government. The Maddox had been providing logistical and electronic surveillance support to South Vietnamese forces engaged in raiding parties on northern Vietnamese soil. 2 days later, when it seemed another attack on the Maddox had ensued, President Johnson snapped into action. He asked for a congressional resolution authorizing him to counter such raids with military action as needed. This allowed Johnson to prosecute what Americans became a disastrous 7-year Vietnam War. But that second attack on the Maddox never took place. It seems the rare weather patterns, distorted radar imaging, and given the impression of multiple hostile ships, when done, had been in the vicinity. When this was ascertained by Navy Captain John Herrick, commander of the 7th Fleet Destroyer Division, he promptly sent the corrective message to Washington. Review of action makes many reported contacts and torpedoes fired appear doubtful. Freak weather effects on radar and overrigger sonarmen may have accounted for many reports. No actual visual sightings by Maddox suggest complete evaluation before any further action taken. But action had already been taken, and Johnson administration's officials weren't about to turn around and let the opportunity slip, so they lied. Within days, Secretary of State Dean Rusk and Defense Secretary Robert McNamara traveled to Capitol Hill to assure lawmakers that the August 4th attacks represented open aggression on the high seas against the United States of America. As Johnson put it, in response to expression of skepticism by Oregon Senator Wayne Morse, McNamara declared, "Our Navy played absolutely no part in it, was not associated with, was not aware of any South Vietnamese actions. If there were any, the Maddox was operating in international waters, was carrying out a routine patrol of the type we carry out all over the world at all times." As Robert Mann writes in a footnote in A Grand Delusion, America's Descent into Vietnam, that statement was at McNamara's new faults. Arkansas Senator William Fulbright agreed to manage the Gulf of Tonkin resolution on the Senate floor largely because he had faith in Johnson's veracity. As Fulbright's staff chief Lee Williams later said, he had no reason to believe that he was used as a dupe, if you will, and this was a ruse on behalf of Johnson to get the authority that he needed to conduct a wider war. You know, B stands for, right? Backstabber. George W. Bush and the Iraq War. Did Bush lie to the American people about those weapons of mass destruction that the U.S. government accepted to find in Iraq? Probably not. More likely, Bush and his people lied to themselves in their zealous efforts to fashion justifications for overthrowing Iraq's leader Saddam Hussein and to ensure Middle East peace, to protect the U.S. homeland, and preserve America's regional influence. But officials had a grave responsibility to ensure extensive fact-finding and sober deliberation in matters of war and peace. The president shouldn't take America to war based on an oops. This was reckless behavior for which the Bush people, including Bush himself, have never been brought to account. It is undeniable that the president and as many of his top officials were bent on going to war against Saddam, irrespective of factual intricacies involved. Sorry about that. There's a rub. That invasion arguably constitutes the greatest American strategic blunder in at least a half a century. Perhaps in the entire post-war period, those kinds of decisions require serious due diligence. So Bush and his people didn't know that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They should have. If not, malfeasance and was abject nonfeasance. The lesson: beware when our leaders manifest a passion for war. That's when it's time to demand honesty, sobriety, and restraint and answers. The burden of proof rests with the war advocates. It doesn't mean we shouldn't go to war, just that when we do, it should be with our eyes open. Interesting there. Because he wrote a book, too, on President McKinley, Architect of the American Century. And he's right. Because there's other examples that these incidences occur. Same thing with the Spanish-American War. The USS Maine blew up. People say General McKinley was involved in that. He had no proof that Spain was responsible. The Korean conflict, same thing. They got into a fight, and something happened. The CIA tried to blame North Korea for it when they split the parallel, 38th parallel. So more of these illegal wars have to stop. It's nothing more than a deception. And now they want us to believe that Iran was responsible for attacking the oil tanker. Give me a break. That video shows nothing but a bunch of shadowy figures. Ooh, yeah, because that's near Persia, so it's got to be the Persians. It's got to be the Iranian government involved in that. Well, my friends, like I said for a long time, study, do a little homework about what's going on. And the stuff I address aforementioned, take a look at that book and these documents. You'll be amazed what they really want in that nation. And you believe attacking Iran is going to be a slam dunk? It will be a lot more complex than what it is. And the fact is this, too. There's even a claim they may have sleeper cells. in the United States, ready to go. Do you want that? I don't. That'll be another example of blowback. And I want none. The people in Iran don't want to go to war either. All right? Doesn't matter what their creed is. Many of them not even Muslims. None of these folks want to go to war. They want to beat them. They want to live their lives, live in harmony, and trade with the world. That is essential in my book. If the Iranian people want change in their government, it's got to be organic. No outside interference. Period. So hands off Iran. Stand down, Mr. Trump. Next one here came from newsreviews.com. And folks, I encourage everyone to please do donations for this organization because they are on financial straits and they do a real good job. This one here is called Oregon Governor Kate Brown Threatens to Call State Police on Republican Legislators. It is by Betty Farouf. The shot heard around the world on July 19, 1775, the first shots were fired at just the dawn in Lexington, Massachusetts, and was called a shot heard around the world. I'm going to finish up my coffee. The battles of Lexington and Concord and the siege of Boston. So it may be in the state of Oregon was chosen many years ago to test Luciferian ideas by the Rockefeller Foundation. I gave a $500,000 grant to Oregon State University a few days before Christmas. December 23rd, 1971. A lot of claims that Oregon was a testing ground for the United States. To support research and the graduate studies of man and his activities as related to environmental quality. The project was coded number RF 71079 and gave the final push to the completion of the plans of the computerization of all elements of human life in Oregon and the move toward socialism. 2 Oregon patriots spoke out the warnings, but no one listened, which has brought us today to the Republican walkout by the Oregon legislator and leaving the state, thereby keeping the Democrats from a quorum, and Governor Kate Brown threatened to call state police to bring them back to the legislator. However, during an interview with Portland television station KGW later in the day, Senator Brian Borchrist, Republican from Dallas, Oregon, threatened Oregon State Police if they try to bring him back to the Capitol, they better send the bachelors and come heavily armed because he was not going to become a political prisoner in the state of Oregon. I like that. Good move. Senator Boquist has told Senate President Peter Courtney on the floor, you send state police after me, Courtney, and hell's coming to get you. Courtney began his political career in 1974 when he was elected to the Salem City Council, dressed as a Peter Rabbit and another long-time political sycophant, and why we need term limits. I wrote an article a few weeks ago about Oregon has been operating under a bogus government since November 8th, 1910, when Article 7 amended our Oregon Constitution was placed into a constitution with one vote being counted in any county. At the time I gave the article the title, Made for Hollywood, and the Shakespeare saying, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exist in their entrances, and one man in his time playing in many parts, his act being aged 7 ages, and cowards die times before their deaths. The valiantly never taste of death but once. The article describes on how an Oregon statewide jural assembly based on the First Amendment and common law grand jury was created. Our founding fathers was very wise men recognizing the fallen nature of man, knew that sooner or later we the people, may have to clean house ourselves, therefore. Based on Antonin Scalia's majority opinion on United States versus Williams, 504, 1992, jural assemblies can be and have been formed in Oregon, and all elected officials from the governor on down have been informed to self-correct, or they could end up in prison. However, the real beginning is when Oregon State Police shot Lavoya Fickham, who never had a traffic ticket in his life, at a roadblock after he, along with others, were protesting on behalf of the imprisonment of Dwight Hammond, 76, and his sons. Stephen, 49, were convicted in 2012 as a prescribed burn on their land to nearby public lands in 2001. The president later pardoned the Hammonds, but the rest of the story will appear in my next article, News Review, suggesting why the environmentalists want the ranchers to go away. Now we have this upheaval in Oregon state government where Governor Kate Brown has been bribing and threatening GOP senators. Ooh, how gutsy she is. Or he, she, whatever you want to call it. One thing I can say about Kate Brown, she's not more than a tyrannical stooge, alright? I am not impressed by this individual at all. Continue on here. Jeff Kropp, a radio talk show host on KSLM 1220, said on his 6 a.m. show on Thursday, June 20th, that he is a good friend of Boquist, a career U.S. Army Special Forces soldier who has been in several revolutions around the world, Iran and Afghanistan, and knows what it's like to be shot at while defending this nation. Told the police, come heavily armed. A call to the station was a bit concerned for Boquist's threat due to a red flag gun bill that was passed in Washington, D.C. without a single vote from Republicans to confiscate people from threatening. More than 64 counties and many sheriffs opposed the bill have declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuary counties in protest. Meanwhile, back at home in Oregon superintendent said he resigned before carrying out Kate Brown's wishes, which suggests that these brave men are saying, don't mess with us. Shouldn't resign. Just give her the big middle finger. A couple callers to Jeff's radio program said they were leaving and going to Idaho, but said Jeff said he's a fifth-generation farmer. And he has to stay. He has to stay and hopes some other brave folks will stay and stand and say, "Don't mess with us either." I am sure the folks that create the General Assembly will agree and look forward to many more folks with the Founding Fathers' DNA to join. Contact Ron V. Ruman at Frontier.com if you want to stop Oregon's malfeasant government. Senator Herman Bartsier, Frontier forester, rancher, portions of Jackson and Josephine counties, called Jeff to report that Governor Kate Brown had visited him 5 times, alternating between bribes and threats. She offered him and the Republicans up to $200 million to save the legislator and allow the Democrats to move their $90 billion 2-year budget through completion while failing to address PERS, who will be receiving huge amounts of the $90 million budget. They keep promising the schools will be getting more money, which they desperately need, but it won't happen. Jeff, 8 years in the Oregon legislature from 1999 to 2007, is very valuable as a talk show host because he can share many of the hidden things the rest of us never know about. For instance, the reasons the Republican senators have walked out. We know it is bad when even the swishy moderate Republicans choose to walk out the second time after they agree to come back after cutting the deal with Governor Brown, but Democrats broke the agreement, the tax and scam agreement. The tax and scam carbon trade protest rally that the loggers held yesterday, June 19th, was supposed to be a reset. In other words, says Jeff, it was supposed to start all over again. A different bill, and they were supposed to allow Republican amendments. None of that happened. They held a sham hearing where they considered Republican amendments and that they voted them all down. So today, June 20th, was supposed to be the vote in the Senate, and why the Senate Republicans walked out, so there would be no quorum. Jeff was a bit concerned about Tim Knott, who has played a very dangerous game at the last time around, by taking a bribe, and also moderate squishy Bill Hasno and Jeff's own Senator Phil Girard, but they all stuck together at this time. Jeff said he had served for 8 years in the Oregon legislature with Kate, so he was surprised to learn the logger who organized the rally at Capitol yesterday got a call at the rally from Kate screaming at him about his Facebook, as he believed as as do so many others, that the governor has mental issues, and I'll never get a story out of my mind of the heart crimes in 2018 when a lesbian and her partner drove their car off a California cliff with foster children inside. I have several other stories that will make a reader sick, and yet we are being asked to embrace the destructive lifestyle. Meanwhile, far too many Christian pastors give us sermons to learn how we must be more tolerant to the LGBTQ agenda. Well, I'm not going to... I say this, folks. This is what the writer has to say. I'm not saying I'm supporting these areas, but it's interesting, to an extent. But we'll continue on here. Lord Marcus in the AmericanThinker.com says, Michelle Cartella, MD, president of American College of Pediatricians, explained that if a brain was born the wrong sex due to the fact that before birth, every single identical twin would have the same gender identity every time. They do not. Identical twins have identical DNA. Therefore, if transgenderism were in the genes, 100% of the time, both twins would either be transgender or non-transgender. Studies show that if one twin is transgender, 72% of the time the other twin is normal. This proves that post-birth events primarily impact your identity. In other words, transgenderism is a mental disorder. Using their both this way. Lie. LGBTQ activist claims rejecting the lifestyle in any manifestation is bigotry. As the same as rejecting me because I am black, says Lloyd. Hey, interesting there. Continue on here. Lloyd continues. Dr. Coretta shared a horrific story in the California Garden class. The teacher read of her students to transgender indoctrination stories for kids. After the teacher finished reading these stories, little Joey went to the restroom and returned to class wearing a dress. The teacher said, boys and girls. Joey says, Joey really is a girl, like Jazz in our story. From now, we need to call her Josephine. This was Joey's parents, the teacher's way to reintroducing Joey's transformation to his fellow kindergartners. Joey's classmates extremely confused. One little girl was terrified. At home, after bathing in the tub, the girl's mother wrapped her in a towel. Passing the mirror, the girl noticed that her hair was slick black. Panicked, she burst into tears. Mommy, I'm turning into a boy. I don't want to turn into a boy. Joey turned into a girl, and I'm going to turn into a boy? Interesting, right? Mind control 101, my friends. Oh, should be proud of who you are, regardless. Good grief. Okay, I'll continue on here. The legislator is about relationships, says Jeff. Even though you may be in the majority, you still want to do things on a bipartisan basis, which means you've got to negotiate. Senator Barrestager told Jeff Tina Kotek, Speaker of the House, and Governor Kate Brown will not budge on anything. Jeff says longtime lobbyists for decades are saying that they've never seen anything like this. Never seen the majority in such an arrogant, uncompromising manner of what Democrats are doing. Pure fascism. Absolutely. Look, even people like them, they're just breaching their oath of office under the Oregon Constitution. They're breaching it. I talked about that when they did that whole red flag law, which is totally illegal under their own state constitution. But they know better, right? Good grief, man. Another continue on here. The Blue Book says the Speaker of the House, Tina Kotek, says beginning with her work to win domestic partnership benefits for faculty and students at the University of Washington in the mid-1990s, has worked to change the world and empower people to be part of that change. She began her public service career as a policy advocate for Oregon Food Bank. She went on to serve the policy director for Children First for Oregon before being elected to the Oregon House Representative in 2006. In 2013, Speaker Kotek became the first openly lesbian speaker of any U.S. state house. Now the long-serving Speaker of the House in Oregon's history has led efforts to improve economic opportunity and promote equity for every Oregonian, including bold legislation to end discrimination based on sexual orientation, raise the minimum wage, improve access to affordable housing and health care, and ban racial profiling. Now let's write about Democrat Kate Brown, Oregon's self-proclaimed bisexual governess, who was appointed 2015 after Cuz Haber's shameful resignation. She earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in environmental conservation was a certificate in women's studies from the University of Colorado Boulder. She earned a law degree and certificate in environmental law from the Northwestern School of Law at Lewis and Clark College in Portland. After law school, Brown was a professor at Portland State University and practiced family and juvenile law. She was appointed to the Oregon House of Representatives in 1991. In 1996, after serving 2 terms, she won election to the Oregon Senate. 2 years later, she was elected Senate Democrat leader, and in 2004 became the first woman to serve as the Oregon Senate Majority Leader. In the fall of 2008, Obama's ally billionaire socialist George Soros poured $500,000 into 4 Secretary of State races in battleground states: Missouri, Montana, Oregon, and West Virginia, winning all of them. Soros' money helped the candidates who support voter fraud to win the Secretary of State office. Then they helped the Democrats in thwarting pre-election efforts to crack down on voter registration fraud. Marxism 101 for Women. In the October 2015 Schwartz Report newsletter wrote about Marxist feminism by Marilee Mellett. Her sister Katie was promoting Karl Marx on the women's movement. Her book laid out in the course of Marxism for Women. Her books captivated in academic classes, and soon women's studies courses were installed in the colleges in a steady wave across the nation with Kate Mellett's books are requiring reading. Imagine this, a 17 or 18-year-old, a girl, 17, 18-year-old, at table of mom studying the syllabus of the first year of college, and there's a college called Women's Studies. This could be interesting, says mom. It seems innocuous to mom and her daughter. How can mom suspect this is a class in which her innocent daughter will be taught that her father is a villain, her mother a fool? And there it is, the United Nations environmental scheme that advanced world government using supposed threats to nature to obtain power. The communist leader of the 1920s and 30s, Maurice Strong, called the godfather of the environmental movement, as a senior member of the United Nations. Well. Looks like it jumps around a little bit, huh? Interesting indeed. Well, I can tell you this, folks. Kate Brown is nothing more than a tyrannical stooge. Once again, a proud oath breaker. I think you should get the oath breakers, like even that one councilwoman, C.D. Baca, and get Scott Israel, former suspended sheriff Scott Israel. All hold hands at Kumbeka. We want you to trust us. We like to break our oaths. Yahoo! Precisely. Well, one thing you gotta do, folks, give her and her lackeys a big middle finger, and the beautiful people in that state. The truth of the matter is, Kate Brown needs you more than you need her. Without you folks, she's nothing but a walking sap of pus. Plain and simple, and that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you send something that's interesting and want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence to the Quorum. Furthermore, I will leave all my footnotes, plus social media sites and email contacts on my Spreaker page. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance, healthy for the soul, can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.